theyeshiva.net.
Make yourselves comfortable. Please. Daf Yutes Amud Aleph. Masada Pesachim, 4 lines from the bottom. Tanan Hasam. Okay. Today we start within Tumah and Tara, a new sugya. A new Mishnah that the Gemarah quotes from Masechta Ediyus, and a new sugya. I don't mean a new sugya not connected to before, but I mean the Gemarah finished more or less discussing the Tumah of Mashka and the Tumah of Eichel, and how it transfers Tumah, and the shit of Rabbi Akiva, and the shit of Rabbi Yossi, and Revi, and Chamishi, and Shlishi. And now, Yutesam and Aleph on the bottom, the Gemarah quotes a new Mishnah in Masechta Ediyus. One of the very interesting Masechtas in Shas is Masechta Ediyus. The word Ediyus comes from the word Edus, like Ediyus is testimonials. An Ed is a witness, Edus is testimony, and Ediyus is a Masechta that basically quotes many testimonials of different Tanoim and different halachas. Usually, every tractate in Shas is made up of a theme. Brachas, Shabbos, Erevin, Pesachim, Shkolim, right? Of course, Sukkah, etc. Yuma is Yom Kippur. Shkolim is the dinim of giving the shekel, machzas a shekel, and so on and so forth. Well, learning Pesachim is dedicated to Pesach. Ediyus is an exception. Ediyus is a compilation of many different themes because it's testimonies, it's Ediyus that were heard from Tanoim about different sugyas. In Masechta Ediyus, we have the Mishnah that we discussed in the beginning, that the Mishnah quoted here in Daf Yudalad Amud Aleph, the beginning of this whole sugya, which was Reb Chanina Zgan HaKoyanim Omer. Reb Chanina Zgan HaKoyanim says, and he gives the testimony how the Koyanim did not mind burning one carbon with another carbon, even though through the combining of the two pieces of meat, they added tumah. This is Ediyus Perik Beis Mishnah Aleph, a testimony of Reb Chanina Zgan HaKoyanim. Reb Chanina Zgan HaKoyanim, as we know, was a Zgan Kohen Gadol. He was the assistant of the Kohen Gadol, and he lived at the end of Bayis Sheni. Now the Gemarah quotes another testimony of Reb Chanina Zgan HaKoyanim. In the same Perik in Masechta Ediyus, in the same Perik, as the Gemarah starts, Tanan Hasam, in Masechta Ediyus, Perik Beis Mishnah Gimel, we're going to have another testimony of Reb Chanina Zgan HaKoyanim. The question is, why is the Gemarah getting to another testimony? We're not learning Masechta Ediyus. The Parshas, the first Mishnah discussed the first testimony of Reb Chanina about burning the meat, which connected to burning Truma on Erev Pesach. So the next piece of Gemarah is discussing another testimony of Reb Chanina in the same Perik in Masechta Ediyus, but only this one, not the other, because he gives other testimonials. But the thing is, there's only 2 of them that deal with Tumah and Tara. So the first one we dealt with, the burning of the meat, and now we deal with the second testimonial of Reb Chanina Zgan HaKoyanim. That's number 1. Number 2, probably why the Gemarah feels the need to bring it is, not just to bring another testimony of Reb Chanina about Tumah and Tara, but because this testimony of his is going to relate to some of the subjects that we dealt with earlier. Because one does need an understanding why the Gemarah is compelled to now quote a new Mishnah from Ediyus and get into analyze that Mishnah, which is not directly related to Masechta Pesachim. That's why I'm giving this introduction. What's the Mishnah? Tanan Hasam. What's Hasam? Hasam is the same place where we learned the first Mishnah that we quoted on Daf Yudalad, which became a Mishnah in Pesachim, which was basically a copy from Ediyus into Pesachim. We learned over there Masechta Ediyus, Perik Beis, Mishnah Gimel, another Mishnah. Also, Reb Chanina Zgan HaKoyanim saying a story, saying a halacha based on his experience, because he was working in the Beis HaMikdash, so he was very relied upon. He was a great source because he was there. So he knows how they paskin different halachas. Fascinating question that came up. I guess it was a story, it was just a possible story. Machat shenimtzaz bebasar. A needle one day is found in the meat of a carbon, of an animal that was slaughtered. An animal was brought to the Beis HaMikdash as a holy carbon. It was slaughtered, and then it's cut up, the flesh is cut up, right? Part of it is burnt on the altar, the emurim, the fat, or the carbon oil, everything. Part of it is cooked and eaten, etc. When the kohen cuts up the meat after the animal was slaughtered, he finds a needle. He finds a needle in the flesh of the carbon when he was cutting up the carbon. Said Reb Chanina's Gana Koyanim, a testimony of how the Chachamim paskent. Hasakin v'ayadayim tahiris. The knife with which the kohen used to cut the meat. We're not talking about the knife of the shchita. We're talking about the knife that he used to cut the meat, which may have touched the needle. And the hands of the kohen, which were using the knife to cut the meat, they're all tahir, they're pure.
We're assuming this needle is tummy.
We're assuming the needle is tummy. Why did the needle get tummy? Why are we assuming it's tummy? It's just a needle. No. The kosher animal that's shechted kahalacha is never an avela. Never an avela. So get rid of. There's no tumas nevela. You think in the Beis Hamikdash every animal was tummy? If you're right that a kosher animal got shechted in the veil, that means every single animal in the Beis Hamikdash would be tummy. We would close down the Beis Hamikdash. There's no tumas nevela, even chulin. If it's a kosher animal that gets shechted properly, there's no tumas nevela. So that's not the issue. We do have to discuss what happened to this needle. The Gemarah is going to discuss it. But apparently this needle is tummy. And apparently the kohen touched the needle. And the sakin touched the needle. Or may have touched the needle. We say it's tahiris. But vahabasa tummy. But the meat is tummy. That's a whole other issue. If the needle can affect the health of the animal and make it treif, make it have a hole that would make it basically susceptible to death, it would basically die, then you have an issue. But we're not talking about that issue. We're talking about Tumah and Tara. Vahabasar Tameh, but the meat of the animal is Tameh. Fascinating. It's Tameh. That means nothing could be eaten, nothing could be used. It all has to be burnt. Nimtzas beperes, but what happens if they found the needle in the excrement of the animal? In the peresh, hakol tahir, everything is tahir, even the meat. What does this mean? So let's see Rashi. Rashi says, Tanan Hasim, Be'edius, the last Rashi testimony. Val hamachat heidim shar edius shem nimtzaz b'bsar kodesh sha'asakin shenogaba v'ayadayim shel koyin shenogu b'toidin v'habasar tamei. Even the hands of the koyin that touched the needle, even the sakin that touched the needle. I was cutting the meat, and I'm like, whoops! I just touched the needle, and I pick up the needle. Oop! You touched the needle, and it's tamei. My hands are tar, the knife is tar, but the basar is tamei. Ulekami mefarish. The Gemarah is going to explain soon. Hai machat my tumah. What type of impurity was in this needle? And not only that, we also want to understand it was a type of tumah that causes the needle to be tamei, the basar to be tamei, the flesh to be tamei, but not the knife to be tamei, and not the hands of the kohen to be tamei. So we'll soon see what type of tumah was this needle. Obviously, Rashi says here that the kohen touched the needle and the knife touched the needle, and still it's tahir. Right? That's what Rashi is saying. Rashi is basically giving us one opinion of the Gemarah later, because there's going to be another opinion. I'm just telling you that the needle was tamei in a different way, and the only reason we're allowing the knife to be tied and the kohen's hands to be tied is because we're not sure they touched the needle. But Rashi here is giving the more straightforward explanation that they touched everything. The meat touched the needle, because the needle is in the meat. So obviously the meat touched the needle, that's not an option. The kohen touched the needle, and the knife touched the needle. And Reb Chanina is giving a chiddush. The basar is tamei, the knife is not tamei, and the kohen is not tamei, and his hands are not tamei. That means the knife is good, it doesn't need any cleansing. The kohen needs no cleansing, his hands need no cleansing. The basar is tamei. This is all if the needle was in the meat itself. If the needle was in the excrement, then no issue whatsoever. Why? If the needle is tamei, the needle is tamei. The answer, of course, is because when this animal swallowed the needle, even if the needle was tamei, the animal does not get tamei. Why does the animal not get tamei? Because a living animal cannot be mekabel tumah. You can only become tamei right? The tumah can only be after death. A living animal you can't make tummy. It just doesn't become tummy, right? So only after the animal dies can it become tummy. So therefore, when the animal swallowed the needle and it's just hanging out in its abdomen, wherever the needle is, the animal, as it's alive, it's not going to be mekabel tumah. Now the animal died. If the needle is touching the basar, the meat, so the needle transfers tumah to the basar after death. But if the needle is not touching the basar, the needle is in the peresh, in the excrement, so then the basar is not touching the needle, so the basar is tart. Why doesn't the excrement, which became tameh from the machat, be metameh the basar? That will see on Daf Chafam at Aleph, the next blot.
I want to ask you, a needle...
We'll see in a moment. We'll see soon.
Tummy. Forget...
Just 1 second, Rabbi Yaakov, yeah?
A needle that's tummy.
Yeah.
Forget anything else.
Yeah.
Tissue.
Good.
And I touch it. The kind that touches it, is he tummy?
Good question. Good question. Let me just take his question. I'll answer your question.
I understand. It's in its excrement.
Okay, so that we'll see. In other words, we're saying that this way. The animal was swallowed. As long as it was not slaughtered, there's no din tumah b'chlal. I don't care what that needle is. The needle could be the highest level of tumah. It could be an avatumah, because it's alive. When could the animal become tameh? After it was slaughtered. After it was slaughtered, I cut it open. Where was the needle? The needle was not in the basar. The needle was in the excrement. That's the pattern I'm following, and therefore I'm attired the basar. Why doesn't the excrement transfer tumah to the basar? The Gemarah is going to discuss on Daf Chafam and Aleph. Let's leave that for a few moments. It traveled. It's for sure traveled. Right.
You can't identify that. If it was...
But still, that's not a problem.
It does travel, I think, after
Yes.
too, right?
Well, not much. I mean.
No, but I'm saying that if it our point here is that we don't know why it's...
Right.
We
Right.
know that it's not.
Yes. Right now it's in the parish. You're good. You're good. Of course, it had to travel there, huh?
I'm saying, yeah, if it doesn't travel Achavisa, then obviously it was before.
Perhaps it swallowed it, and at some point it reached its excrement, and now it was slaughtered, and that's where it is. And because it's not in the basar after death, it was in the basar mechayim, perhaps. But since after death it's not in the basar is tar. Now let's talk a regular situation. Forget a behemoth and a machat. What type of tumah does a needle give? What type of tumah does a needle give? A needle is a keli. What do we mean a keli? It's a utensil. Okay. So the general concept, how does a keli become tameh? What's the most frequent thing? A keli would be tameh. Let's say a sheretz, right? A sheretz touches it. Let's say a mace touches it, right? One of the dead shrotzim, or any source of tumah. Any source of tumah touches it, whatever it is, whether it's tumas nevela, whether it's tumas zav, whether it's tumas zava, whatever it is, and a keli becomes tameh. A keli can only become tameh min atayda, you remember? From an av hatuma. A keli can't become tameh from a rishon l'tumah, right? For example, if I have food that became tameh, that food will not be metameh a keli, like we learned before. A keli and a person, midayraisa, can only become tameh from what? From an av hatuma, not from a rishon l'tumah, and not from a sheni l'tumah. A machat is a keli. So the only way a machat could become tameh is from an av hatuma. Now, a machat could touch a mace. If it touches a mace, it's a serious issue. Because then, we learned, it takes on the same tumah. Chalal cherev, we learned from the pasuk Chalal cherev, we learned that cherev hareyu kechalal. Torah says if somebody dies, they transfer tumah for 7 days to the person who touches the mace, and it says somebody, not only who died, somebody who was killed by a sword. Why is that relevant? That the sword has the same status of tumah like the source. That's the unique halacha about clay matches, metal kalim that are similar to swords, that they assume the status of tumah of the source of the tumah. So if he touches a mace, he mamish has the same status. Not only that, if he touches an adam who touched a mace, he becomes an av hatumah like the adam. He becomes an av hatumah like the adam, and therefore he also has to go through the paraduma cleansing and has to go to the mikveh. Okay. Now this machat touches another keli. What's the halacha? The halacha is, if the keli was an av hatumah, then the second keli becomes a rishon l'tumah. But let's say the sheretz touched the machat, then what happens? If the sheretz touches the machat is a rishon. It will not transfer tumah to any keli. A keli will not be metameh a keli unless the first keli was an av hatumah. That means if I have a keli a metal bowl or an earthenware bowl, whatever, and a dead sheretz falls into it, and my keli became a rishon, you could now put in 100 kelim into that keli. It's all pure. A keli is not metame a keli, just like a keli is not metame an adam, unless it's an av hatuma, and it's not so easy for a keli to be an av hatuma. That means a keli has to touch a mace, or has to touch an adam who touched a mace. But stam, a keli that becomes tame, it becomes a rishon l'tuma if it became tame from an av hatuma, and therefore it will never transfer tuma to an adam or to a keli. It will transfer tuma to food. It will transfer tuma to drinks. That we know, because oichel can become tame from a rishon l'tuma.
That's why the bus is.
So that's why when this machat became tame, the basar becomes tame. Why does the basar become tame? Because it transfers tuma to food. So the meat, which is now dead meat of a balchai, becomes tame. So the basar is tame. You can't eat this carbon anymore. But does the machat make the knife tahar? The machat doesn't make the knife tahar. Okay, Rashi said we're going to get to what happened to the needle, but I'm just giving this preface to understand generally how we treat kelim.
We have to make sure.
Min ha-Torah, a keli will never be metame another keli. It will never be metame an adam unless it's an av hatuma, unless it touched a mace or it touched a tmei mace. If it touched an av hatuma and it's a rishon l'tuma, right? The keli will never transfer tuma to another keli and will never transfer tuma to a human being. That's a very, very important thing to understand. The question now is something else. Can a keli be metame? So keli can be metame a keli can be metame a keli can be metame oichel, a keli can be metame mashke. Why can't it be metame a keli? Because a keli can only become tame from another av, not from a rishon. Which is why a keli will never become tame from food. Like we learned before, when you put food into a keli, the keli will not become tameh. I don't care if that oichel is a rishon. It will never become tameh from oichel. It will not even become tameh from oichel, even if the oichel touched a mace, it will not become tameh from oichel. It's not considered an avatuma. And therefore, oichel cannot be metame a keli. What about mashke? Same thing. Min ha-Torah, liquid cannot be metame a keli. You have tamedika liquid. If the liquid is a rishon, it cannot be metame a keli. The liquid touched a sheret, so the liquid touched a sheret, but it's not being metame keli. However, by here in this case of liquid being metame a keli, there's a rabbinic injunction. The rabbi said that mashke that's tame makes a keli tame only midirabana, not min ha-Torah. Min ha-Torah, nothing happens. Why did the rabbis do this? A very simple reason. Because there is one situation where liquid could be an av hatuma. When? The saliva or the urine of a zav, a zava, a nida, their urine or saliva is an av hatuma. And if that touches a keli, the keli taka becomes tameh because it's an av hatuma. So therefore they were geyser that all mashke that are tameh, even though it's a lower level of tumah, like a rishon or a sheni, the mashke will make the keli tameh. What status? The keli will always be a sheni. Midirabana. Why will the keli always be a sheni? Because if the mashke is a rishon, the keli will be a sheni. Even if the mashke is a sheni, midirabbanan, all mashkes become rishons whenever they become tameh. Mashke is always elevated to rishon. We learned that earlier in the sugya. So the keli that touches tameh dika mashke will always be tameh only midirabbanan. Min ha-Torah, regular mashke that's tameh will not be metame kelim. Min ha-Torah, they will not be metame kelim, and oichel will never be metame kelim, even midirabbanan, because oichel can never be an avatuma. Okay, step 2. We're going to get to step 2. This is introduction number 1 that's very important to understand. Introduction number 2 is tumas yadayim. Min ha-Torah, there's no such a thing your hands get tameh. Either you're tameh completely or you're not tameh at all. There's no compartmentalization in biblical tumah. My nose is tameh, my hands are tameh, my feet are tameh. No. Tumah touches me, I am tameh completely. I touch me in my pinky, only my pinky. My pinky is part of my guf, everything is tameh. Midirabbanan, there is a compartmentalized tumah, and it's called tumas yadayim. What's tumas yadayim? Tumas yadayim, we learned already earlier in the Gemarah. The nekuda of tumas yadayim, the point is, very briefly, let's remember, the Chachamim were geyser that hands that are unrinsed should be considered sheni l'tumah. They're not tameh, midirabbanan, there's a tumah on your hands if they're unrinsed. Why? Why would they do this? The answer is they were worried about truma. Remember, again, it's hard for us to understand. We live in a society where there's sinks everywhere and people wash their hands. But in the olden days, water was a very scarce. You had to go to the well. There was no sinks in your house. And generally, people worked. Your hands were dirty. The kohen is going to come and eat truma. And he doesn't know that you don't have to wash your hands before truma. There's no halacha. You're not allowed to be metamet truma, but dirty hands are not truma. He's going to eat the truma. What may happen? By touching the truma with his dirty hands, he may look at the truma and say, this is inedible. You can't eat this. And what is he going to do to the truma? He's going to throw it away. You're not allowed to do that to truma. Or he may even eat it and then spit it out and throw it in the garbage because his hands were so dirty. And what's going to happen to the truma? Truma that's not allowed to be wasted. It's not tamedik truma. It's taredik truma. Suddenly went to the garbage because of his dirty hands. How do you prevent such a thing? So the Chacham said, we have an idea. Tell everybody to wash their hands before they eat truma. But who's going to listen? I don't have time. So they made a halacha. Stam yadayim is poisel truma. If you don't rinse your hands, your truma is forbidden to eat because it's possible. The truma becomes a shlishi because your hands are called sheni. So hands of a person which are unrinsed are called sheni l'tumah midirabonon, and they make a shlishi. Of course, if I touch chulin with dirty hands, it's no problem because chulin can't be a shlishi unless you hold like Rabbi Akiva. But truma could be a shlishi. So if I touch my hands with truma and I didn't wash them, this truma now has to be burnt. It's called a shlishi. Fascinating halacha. This is called tumas yadayim. Stam yadayim ashniyos and poislis as a truma. What's the solution? Solution is just wash your hands. Rinse your hands. Or solution number 2 is rinse your hands in the morning, and as long as you didn't do hesach hadas, as long as you didn't divert your attention from your hands, you're good, and you don't have to wash your hands again when you eat truma. So the bottom line is that there's a gzeira of the Rabbanan on stam yadayim. Min ha-Torah, this whole thing wouldn't apply. Why? There's no such a thing your hands become tamei. Either your hands are tamei, either you're all entirely tamei or nothing of you is tamei. And second of all, min ha-Torah, you don't get tamei because you're dirty. That's not called tumah. Tumah is not because you're dirty. Tumah is because you touched the source of tumah, not because your hands are unclean. And therefore the tara and tumah completely of yadayim is midirabbanan. It's not min ha-Torah.
That's interesting because the Rabbanim make a tumah when there's no even existing.
Yeah.
The idea of it.
They wanted to protect truma. I'll tell you, they wanted to protect truma. That was the point. They wanted to protect truma. This protected truma. This was never, because a kohen never touched truma without washing his hands. So when he touched the truma, truma remained clean, remained pure, and he ate it, and it was not discarded, and it was not thrown out.
It doesn't even play in this thing at all.
Yeah,
The
you're right.
idea of it.
Yeah. And by the way, we wash our hands before bread, at least according to many sources, just for that reason. Because we eat with koyanim, and koyanim always had to wash their hands before they ate bread, because most of their bread was truma. That's how they survived. And they didn't want to differentiate between Jews, because people eat together constantly. So they made that everybody should wash their hands before bread. So ad hayoim hazeh, we're washing our hands before we eat bread. Why? Only because of this reason, because tam yadayim shniyas. There are other reasons, but this is the primary reason for natilas yadayim before a meal, before eating bread. This is the primary reason. Now, comes the Mishnah, Reb Chanina, and what does he say? This needle is tamei. It's a keli that's tamei. We're soon going to see how the needle got tamei. The Gemara is going to discuss that. I don't want to get into that because that becomes a little complicated. But we're assuming that this needle is tamei. Some reason we know this needle is tamei, or we assume it's tamei.
And it's giving over to
And therefore it's giving over tumah. It's a keli. The basar gets tamei. Why does the basar get tamei? Because oichel gets tamei from a keli. The knife doesn't get tamei. Because a keli is not metame keli unless it's an avatuma. And the kohen's hands don't get tamei. That's interesting. The kohen's hands don't get tamei. Now, I understand the kohen doesn't get tamei because a keli doesn't make a person tamei. Just like it doesn't make a keli tamei, it doesn't make a person tamei. So even if I'm a kohen and I touch the needle, if the needle is not an avatuma, I'm not going to become tamei, just like my knife is not going to become tamei, right? Remember, an adam and a keli will only become tamei from an avatuma. They will not become tamei from oichlin, and not become tamei from mashkin min ha-Torah, and not become tamei from another keli that's not an avatuma. They will only become tamei from an avatuma.
They can actually eat the meat.
This meat you can't eat. The meat is tamei.
Right.
But the knife is
So
tahir.
if you ate it, you didn't become tummy.
That's an interesting question. What happens if you eat food that's tamei? So min ha-Torah, there's no tumah on that, because the food doesn't make me tamei.
Right.
Let's say I'm a kohen, and I have a piece of bread that's tamei, right? And I eat it. I'm not allowed to eat it, let's say. Or let's say I am allowed to eat it. A kohen is allowed to eat. A kohen is allowed to get tummy. He's just not allowed to get tummy from tumas meis. So let's say you have a piece of bread that's a chulin, that's a sheni, and I'm a kohen and I eat it, right? Min hatayra, nothing happened.
What about an oath? Based on Leah?
That's one exception. One exception.
Is that the Raisa?
Yeah, that's one exception, yeah. Nivlas oif tahir by Beis Habliya. But generally speaking, me taking oichel, eating it, consuming it, touching it, doesn't make me tameh. The Rabbanon were goyzer a tumah that if I eat oichlin tmeim or I drink mashkin tmeim, I become a sheni. They did that. Why did they do that? I'll tell you what was happening. What was happening is there was a kohen. He was starving, okay? He comes to Yesheva Brachas. He sees a bulkel on the table. The bulkel happens to be a sheni. It's tameh. Tameh. He has no problem. He can eat it, right? Okay, he eats it. He's so hungry. He's chewing it, right? And he's tired because he touched oichel. Yeah. He goes home, he's still chewing his challah, and he's starving. And in his house, his wife prepared a whole meal of truma, right? So he takes an apple or he takes a tomato and he puts it in his mouth. It's not a problem because he's tired. But what happens? Or he takes a drink of truma. What happens? In the mouth, the liquid or the truma food touched the challah that I ate in your house. So what happens now? I made my truma tameh in the mouth, and now I'm eating truma tameh, which is awesome. Maybe awesome in Atayra. Right? It's also an issue to be metame. Sai is metame and sai an issue to eat it once it's tame. So this was a problem because a kohen can eat tamedika food and it seems fine because it is fine because he's not becoming tame and he's allowed to eat truma and he is allowed to eat truma a second later, but he can't mix it in his mouth and here it got mixed in his mouth. So what did the Chachamim do to prevent this? They said if you eat tamedika food or tamedika drinks, you become a sheni automatically. Oh, if you become a sheni. Now, if you touch truma, you're going to passel it. So they prevented all the problems from this happening. So now you yourself become a sheni, and since you yourself become a sheni, only midrabanan, so you're not going to touch truma. This is all the fences, the chachamim, different fences they made for tuma and tara. Okay. Huh? Now, here's the issue. So this is what Reb Chanina's Gana Koyanim said. The needle is tameh, the meat is tameh, the knife is tar, and the hands of the kohen are tar, and of course the whole kohen is tar. Omar Rebbe Akiva. Rebbe Akiva said on this Mishnah, Zachinu, we were zoicha, she'ein tumas yadayim b'mikdash. That the whole gzeira of tumas yadayim was not made in the Beis HaMikdash. The whole issue that unrinsed hands are considered shiny and they passel truma was not in Beis HaMikdash. How does Rabbi Akiva know? Parshas. Madach, regular hands that you didn't do anything wrong. You were just misiach das. You weren't thinking about them. If I want to go eat bread now, I have to wash my hands. For sure, if my hands touched a source of tumah, a machat, for sure my yadayim would be tameh. Midrabana, not minatayim. I know that ain't keli mitame keli. But tumas yadayim is the chak. Like you said, it's an original halacha that even if there's no tumah whatsoever. But since yadayim askani is saying, since the Chazal said your hands are moving all the time, including when you're sleeping, and they touch places that are dirty, and you sweat a lot, right? And therefore it touches sweat, and it becomes mos, and there's filth on the hands very often, especially if you're working. And it's a hot day and you're sweating. Therefore, it's going to be metame, the bread that you touch. It's going to make it a shlishi because the yadayim are called sheni. So what would the chachamim say if your hands actually touch a source of tumah? They should not be tameh. They should be tameh. And yet here, the yadayim are not tameh. So Rabbi Akiva said, Zachinu, thank God we have a schus. Ain't tumah yadayim. Why is it such a schus? Rashi says, Zachinu.
Only b'mikdash.
Yeah, only b'mikdash. So Rashi uses 4 words to explain Rabbi Akiva. Schus, v'toiva, v'revach, v'takana. So a schus, it's a toiva, it's a profit, and it's a takana. It's something that's very good for us. A takana, like fixes us. Hilanu mehefsit kachim shlei nigzid gzeiris yadayim b'mikdash. Like you would say, thank God they didn't do tumas yadayim b'mikdash. Why? It saves so many karbanas. You know why? If there'll be tumas yadayim b'mikdash, what would happen? A kohen is sitting and talking to his friend, and he touches a carbon. Oh, tameh. Tamei, 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 Tamei. Everything is Tamei. Everything is going to the Sreifa. So Rabbi Akiva says, Zachinu, thank God, there's no Tumas Yadayim inside the Beis HaMikdash. Huh? Schus v'toiva v'revach v'takana.
They're also always,
Huh?
also in the Beis Hamikdash, they're always washing their hands.
Right, but if they didn't, if there was Hesach Hadas, in my Rashi, in this Gemarah it says v'takana. I guess in this Rashi it doesn't say v'takana. You hear it says v'takana. V'takana ilana me'efset kachim shle nigzir gzeias yadayim b'mikdash l'tamei b'davar she'ein metamei adam. That the Chachamim did not say that the yadayim should become tamei. Complaining of moide de kavart. He's saying that this testimony of Reb Chanina teaches me that the gzeira of tumas yadayim was not in the Beis HaMikdash. That's a moide de kavart. That means if I'm a kohen and I want to eat a meal in the Beis HaMikdash with bread, do I have to wash my hands?
No.
No.
No tumas.
There's no tumas yadayim in the Beis HaMikdash.
How would you define Mikdash here? Is it anywhere within the confines
Yeah.
of not just the
Right, yeah. And let's understand why, how he proved it. Because he's thinking to himself, if the Chachamim made a gzeir in the Beis HaMikdash, that even stam yadayim, regular yadayim, where there's no concern, yeah, still, it's tamei. Even though this gzeir would have caused a major hefset for kachim. It would have ruined so many karbanos, because it's a common thing that you didn't rinse your hands before you touched meat. It's a common thing. So if the Chachamim would have made such a gzeira in the Beis HaMikdash, for sure they would have made a gzeira that if your hands mamish touched tumah, your hands touched meat that's tamei, or your hands touched a needle that's tamei, which is more chamor than stam yadayim. For sure they would make your hands tamei, especially that such a gzeira wouldn't even ruin so many karbanos, because it's not so common that your hands should touch meat that's tamei or a needle that's tamei. So if they would have made the first gzeira, that stam yadayim are tamei, which is less tumah, and more hefset, still they would make that gzeira. For sure they would make a gzeira if your hands touched a bus or a macha that's tamei, where it touched mamish tumah, and especially that wouldn't even be so detrimental because it's not such a common thing. The fact that they didn't do this means that they hold the whole Tumas Yadayim is not in the Beis HaMikdash. It doesn't apply. So again, Minat Torah, for sure the guy didn't become tummy from touching the meat, because Oichel will not become an Av HaTumah. So touching the basar will not make me tummy, right? It will not become an Av HaTumah. At least not Legabe Adam and Kalim. Even the needle, as Rashi says, we're talking about a needle that's not an avatumah. If it's not an avatumah, it can't be metame the kohen. The question is only tumas yadayim. Midirabanan. Rabbi Akiva says, from here we learn that there's no tumas yadayim b'mikdash. So the Gemarah says, and here we learn just from this question how you have to learn a shtickle Gemarah. V'neima she'ein tumas yadayim v'kelim b'mikdash. Something missing from Rabbi Akiva's line. Rabbi Akiva should have added one word. We see from here that there's no tumas yadayim and there's no tumas kelim in the mikdash. Meaning, remember there was another gzeira d'Rabbanan. What was the second gzeira d'Rabbanan? That liquid is metame kelim d'Rabbanan. Minat Torah, oichel is not metame kelim, right? Oichel is not metame kelim. That's why we said when a kohen touches the basar is not metame because oichel is not metame adam. The machat is not metame sakin. Why? Because a keli is not metame a keli, minat Torah. But he should have added one more thing. Ein tumas yadayim v'kelim b'mikdash. That it's a schus that the Chachamim were not geyser one more thing. What was the other thing we learned? The Chachamim said that all liquid that's tamei that falls into a keli makes the keli tamei, not minat Torah. Minat Torah, keli will only become tamei from an avatumah, and if the mashka is an avatumah. But midirabbanan, any mashka that's tamei, even if the mashka is only a sheni, right, it will make the keli into a mitzias of tumah. It won't make the keli a shlishi. No, mashka is a rishon, but mashka minadirabbanan always becomes a rishon. So it's going to make the keli always a sheni. Even if the mashka is a sheni, it's considered rishon, because they were guys that all the mashkins that become tummy should have a gather of rishon, and therefore it's going to make the keli a sheni. A sheni. Outside of the Beis HaMikdash, there is gzeiras kelim, just like this tumas yadayim. Inside of the Beis HaMikdash, there's no gzeiras kelim, just like there's no tumas yadayim. How do we see it from this testimony that the Chacham didn't make a gzeiras kelim? Yeah. So Rashi says, "V'neima Even in something where a keli is not where it would not become tamei min atayra, where the keli would not become tamei min atayra, but the rabbanon would be geyser not in the Beis Hamikdash. The Elul b'chulin geyser rabbanon beituma, because by chulin the rabbanon would geyser tuma bekelim va'afa gavdim deiraisa tar kedetnan gabe yud ches davar. Like we learned a Mishnah about the 18 Gezeiros, we're going to learn about that in a moment. Ha'oichlim va'akelim shenitmu b'mashkin v'hachiktani sakin tar. Food and kelim that became tamei through mashkin. Ha'oichlim va'akelim shenitmu b'mashkin. We see that kelim could become tamei through mashka. That's a din midirabbanan. And here the sakin is tar. Rabbi Akiva should have added this point. Why is the sakin tar? It touched the machat. Oh, you'll say, because ain't keli metama keli. But 1 second. We're assuming when the kohen opens up the meat, when he cuts open the animal, there's a lot of rinsing. So there's usually liquid, right? So the mashke should be metama the keli. Because the mashke gets tameh from the machat, right? Or the mashke gets tameh from the basar. And the basar is tameh, the machat is tameh. Oichel is metame mashke. So the mashke is now tameh from the basar or from the machat, right? And now the mashke, which became tameh, should be metame the sakin of the kohen. If the sakin touched the mashke, why not? What's the answer? The answer is that gzeir is only outside of the Beis Hamikdash. Just like yadayim. If my hands touch the basar or touch the machat, ain't tumas yadayim b'mikdash. The Akiva should have added one more line. Ain't tumas kelim b'mikdash. Because if there would be tumas kelim b'mikdash, then the knife would be tar, not minatayra. Minatayra touched the needle. It touched meat. But midirabanan, it probably touched mashkin. And if it touched mashkin, it should be tamei midirabanan. Why not? The answer is, ain't tumas kelim b'mikdash. Why didn't Akiva add that line, that word? So we see what the Gemarah is asking. When Rabbi Akiva said something, was being so meticulous, being so medayik in his words, why he omitted, why he deleted one item. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav Tamer Rabbi Yossi b'Rab Chanina. Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rav. Some say it was Rabbi Yossi who said this, and he was the son of Reb Chanina. Yadayim koidem gzeiros kelim nishnu. Pretty simple. Tumas Yadayim Rabbanon was taught, it was instituted before the Gzeira that Mashkin could be Metama Kelim. That's it. So Rabbi Akiva is explaining Reb Chanina's Gana Kayanim. The Takana of Tumas Yadayim was taught before. The Takana of Kelim was taught later. When Reb Chanina said his Eidos about the knife and the Yadayim, it wasn't yet a Gzeira. If it wasn't yet a Gzeira, so why should you talk about it? In other words, even outside of the Beis Hamikdash, the sakin would be tahir. Even outside, after the Gzeira, there would be a difference in the Beis Hamikdash and outside the Beis Hamikdash. Just like by Yadayim. Outside of the Beis Hamikdash, my Yadayim would be tamei, inside would be tahir. Outside the Beis Hamikdash, the sakin would be tamei because it touched mashke, that's tamei, inside it's tahir. But when Reb Chanina said this Eidos of the Beis Hamikdash, there was no concept of Tumas Kelim yet. So Rabbi Akiva can't say, Zachinu she'ein Tumas Kelim b'mikdash. We're zoiche that there was no Tumas Kelim b'mikdash, and therefore Reb Chanina said the sakin is tired. Outside of the Beis Hamikdash, there's also no Tumas Kelim. The whole Tumah wasn't there yet. Of course, ain't Tumas Kelim b'mikdash. It's not a Chiddush, it's not in the Beis Hamikdash. First of all, it's wrong to say because it's not in the Beis Hamikdash, it's also outside of the Beis Hamikdash. They made it later because there is a liquid that could be an avatuma, the saliva of a zav or a zava. Their saliva or urine could be an av. So they were afraid that if you allow mashka to be touching kalim, even though the mashka is a rishon, what happens if in that mashka there's an avatuma? The keli becomes tameh, but the person ignores that. So they made that all mashka becomes tameh. It's metame kalim. Verstehst? Right. It's a very practical thing. A zav is eating cereal and milk in the morning, right? The milk became tameh. The milk became tameh. The milk is not metame a keli because the milk is a rishon, let's say. The milk is a sheni, right? But if the zav saliva is in the milk, the keli is a rishon l'tumah, but he doesn't know that because it's chalav. So they made that all mashke that's tameh is metame keli. But that was a later institution. That's what he says. Yadayim kaidem gzeiros kelim nishnu. Rashi says. Probably after.
After. So this Zera wasn't done right after.
So Rashi says, take a look at Rashi. Yodayim koidem Gzeres Kelim Nishnal Atamim Midirabanan. Yodayim was taught before Gzeres Kelim to make it Tamim Midirabanan. Ukeshehiidu Eidazu Adayim Leinigzed Gzeres Hacham Mal Tumas Kelim Dirabanan. He can't say with Zoicha there's no Tumas Kelim Mikdash. That he shaita Philip Almanami Layavoy. Because at that time, even outside of the Beis HaMikdash, even Baalm in the rest of the world, there wouldn't be this Gzeres Kelim. So that's Zechinu Shen Gzeres Kelim Mikdash. So Rabbi Akiva can't prove from the Eidos of Reb Chanina that they weren't Geyser on Kelim Mikdash. Because when he said his Eidos, this decree didn't even exist outside of the Beis HaMikdash. So now you might ask a question, so why did Reb Chanina have to mention that the sakin is pure? Why would you think that the sakin is impure? I understand why he has to mention that the yadayim are pure, because you would think there's tumas yadayim b'mikdash. But l'chayre, ain't keli metama keli, why would he have to say that the sakin is pure? Unless you would think that there's gzeiras keli b'mikdash. So we'll see soon why Reb Chanina would have to mention the sakin is tar. L'chayre, why do you have to mention it if there's no gzeiras keli b'mikdash? Because even outside of the Beis HaMikdash there's no gzeiras keli. But at this point, this is how the Rav or Rabbi Yossi explained why Rabbi Akiva did not speak about Gzeiras Kelim. Amar Rava says, I'm sorry, this is not going to work. V'atravayu boi beyoim gazru. Both dinim, both halachas, Tumas Yadayim and Tumas Kelim from Mashkin were decreed by the Chachamim on the same day, boi beyoim. What is Rava referring to? The Mishnah says in Maseches Shabbos, the first Perek, Daf Yud Gimel, that the Chachamim went to visit a Jew named, a sage named Hananya ben Chizkiah ben Gorin. Famous story, they went up to his attic to visit him. And suddenly they turn around, they say, who came to visit him? Most of the sages of the time. So they decided, you know what, not every day do we get such a Knessia Gdoila, such a summit of Chachmei Yisrael, and they put to vote many questions and gzeiras that the Chachamim wanted to decree. And 18 gzeiras were decreed that same day, boy bayoim, on the attic, on the aliyah of Hananya ben Chizkiah ben Gorin. And it was stringency. It says that day, Rabu Talmidei Beis Shammai al Talmidei Beis Hillel, the students of Beis Shammai who were more stringent, won in the debate, in the majority over Talmidei Beis Hillel, and the Yud Ches Davar Nishnu Boy Bayam. There's 18 decrees, many of them Tumah and Tara of that day, which are enumerated in the first paragraph of Masechta Shabbos. And the Gemarah here is going to mention a few, because that's our point. The Tanan we learned in a Mishnah, this is Masechta Zavim, where the Mishnah, Masechta Zavim, Perek K, lists some of the 18 things that they decreed, and listen to a list. Here are things that the Chachamim made, that they should be a Sheni, L'Tumah, and they should passel Truma. The first one is HaSefer. Fascinating halach, Sefer. What's a Sefer? A Sefer literally means a book, which basically means Sifrei Torah, and all the Kisvei HaKodesh, the writings of the Tanakh that were written on parchment like a Sefer Torah. You see, what used to happen is as follows. It's strange to think that a Sefer Torah would be Tomei, but the Chachamim were geyser that a Sefer Torah should be a Sheni L'Tumah, which means it passes Truma. Fascinating halacha. What happened? What happened? People used to guard, they used to put away in a corner, in a hiding place, like a safe, precious things. So they put away naturally two things over there. Truma. Koyanim would put their Truma, Yisraelim would put their Truma, because it's holy food. If I had Truma in my house, I'm a Yisrael, and it's holy food, I don't want my kids to eat it, they're not allowed to eat it, my wife to eat it, my mate to eat it. So what do? I lock it up in a safe until I give it to the Kohen. What else do I put in the safe? I put my Sefer Torah, my Kisvei HaKodesh, two holy things that I don't want anybody should touch, and I want to safeguard it. So I put it away in a corner. Mice are attracted to food. So the mice would come looking for the truma. They don't care if it's truma. Mice eat truma. They don't discriminate. And when mice have truma, right there, the Sifrei Torah. You ever saw what mice do to paper and parchment and cloth? They started to ruin a lot of Sifrei Torah. They used to eat the Svarim and destroy them. So Chacham didn't know, what are we supposed to do? This was like an entrenched habit that everybody put Sifrei Torah, Kisvei Kodesh, the holy writings near the truma, and the mice came and ate up the Sifrei Torah and ruined them. So what they do? They made that Kisvei HaKodesh should be a Sheni L'Tumah. So if they touch Truma, they become Pasul. the truma becomes possible. So now everyone started to separate the kisvei hakodesh from the truma, and it saved the day. So the mice ran to the truma. The mice didn't run to the kisvei hakodesh. So that's why the chachamim made that all kisvei hakodesh are called sheni l'tumah, and they passel truma. Now for this, it's not a chumash that we have. It's not a sheni l'tumah. You have to have a sefer Torah or neviim or ksuvim that's written on parchment with ink, and it has to be written b'ksav shuri, meaning the handwriting, the alphabet, and the letters with which we write a sefer Torah. Let's say you have only a yiriyah. Let's say you have one piece of parchment, and you have a chelik. Let's say you have a piece from Parshas Shmois or Parshas Kisava. If you have on it 85 oisius, it's enough to be called a sefer Torah, and it passes truma. Why 85 oisius? Because that's the amount of the oisius in the Parsha Vayihi ben Soya Ha'aron, which is considered a sefer Torah b'fnei atzmai. The Gemarah says in Masada Shabbos Kuf Tezayin. The bottom line is, this is the first thing they were geyser that day, that a sefer kisvei hakodesh has tumah. Next, yadayim. This is the tumas yadayim. This is the source of tumas yadayim. Regular hands, even though you do not know that they became tameh, are considered tameh as long as you did not guard them and you did not rinse them in water according to halacha. You did not do netilas yadayim. Next, tvul yom. We know what a tvul yom is. Somebody became tameh, he went to the mikveh. Nightfall did not happen yet. His tumah is much weaker because he's already tired, but it's not nightfall yet. He has the halacha like a sheni. If he touches truma, the truma becomes a shlishi. Next, ha'oichlin v'ha'kelim shenitmu b'mashkin. Food or vessels that became tameh through mashkin. What are we talking about here? What do we see here? The first case is oichlin. Now you might ask, why are oichlin nitmo mimashkin part of the gzeira of Yudches Davar? Right? Didn't we learn the whole time Rabbi Akiva holds that mashke transfers tumah min ha-Torah? Yitma, yitame. You don't need the attic of Hananya ben Chizkiah to tell me that mashke could be metame oichel. Mashke to be metame kelim, that's a gzeira d'Rabbanan that we're talking about. But mashke be metame oichel, how does that come in here? So the Gemarah in the first perek of Shabbos, Daf Yudalid explains this is talking about mashke that got tameh from my yadayim. I take my hands, I touch my coffee, so the mashke now is got tameh from my yadayim, and now this mashke touches oichel. That's the vart. Because the Chachamim made that mashke becomes a rishon when it becomes tameh. So if my yadayim touch my coffee, the coffee becomes a rishon. Now my coffee touches your bread, that bread becomes a sheni, but it's all the Rabbanon. Because the whole tumas yadayim is the Rabbanon. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about regular mashke that touched regular oichel. Mashke that touched the sheretz, that touched oichel. According to Rabbi Akiva, is min ha-Torah. Mashke that touched the sheretz is tamei merishin midoraisa, and it's metamei oichel midoraisa l'das Rabbi Akiva. Here we're talking about mashke that became tamei from yadayim. What about the second case? Kalim. If kalim got tamei, how? From a mashke that touched the sheretz, it's only midrabanan, because mashke that's a rishon can't be metamei a keli. Only mashke that's avatuma. This is a gzeira d'Rabbanan. Ha'oichlin v'ha'kelim shenitmu b'mashke. What do we see from this Mishnah? The same day they did both. Yadayim and kelim is the same day. So how can you tell me Rabbi Akiva doesn't mention kelim? Because Tumas Yadayim is before, and when he said his Eidus, it was only Yadayim. He can't talk about kelim. Here you see that both Gzeiras happened simultaneously, by Bayayim. So Rabbi Akiva should have added Tumas kelim. Tumas kelim. Now you could ask us, you could say simply, you could say Reb Chanina, his Eidus was before this. Reb Chanina maybe did his Eidus before they made the Gzeira on Kalim, right? You could say that. But what about Yadayim? We see here that Yadayim was done together with Kalim. So if Yadayim was done together with Kalim, so then what's going on? So if Yadayim is done together with Kalim, if you're talking about Yadayim, you can talk about Kalim. If you're not talking about Kalim, don't talk about Yadayim. You are talking about Yadayim, that there's a Tumas Yadayim. So when you talk about Tumas Kalim. Huh? So I do want to bavon on just one thing here. One thing, and then we'll get to the answer. And Tosfos discusses this, and I'll just say it bekitzer. The Gemarah tells us in Masechta Shabbos that Tumas Yadayim goes back very, very far. It goes back to Shlomo HaMelech. Shlomo HaMelech is the one who made Tumas Yadayim. This was not done on the roof of Hananiah ben Chizkiah. I'll soon tell you what was done on the roof. Shlomo HaMelech did it only for karbonos. Shlomo HaMelech said if you eat a carbon, you have to rinse your hands. This was Shlomo HaMelech's chiddush, nothing else. Shlomo HaMelech built the Beis HaMikdash. So Shlomo HaMelech made Tumas Yadayim. V'neima. The second Tosfos Testament base. That's why we say that Shlomo HaMelech was Mesakin, Erevin, and Natilas Yadayim. What's for Natilas Yadayim? Shlomo HaMelech didn't make a takana that you have to make Natilas Yadayim on Truma or Chulin. He made takana only on Kachim. That's the chiddush of Shlomo HaMelech. Okay? So Shlomo HaMelech makes Yadayim for Kachim. Talmidei Shammai and Hillel are now sitting on an attic. How much time after Shlomo HaMelech? 1,000 years. Shlomo HaMelech builds the first Beis HaMikdash. It stands for 400 years, 410 years. Gets destroyed. 70 years later, they rebuild another Beis HaMikdash. So another 420 years. So already, by Shlomo HaMelech's time, from the building of the Beis HaMikdash, you already have more than 800 years. Over 800, already 830 years. Shlomo HaMelech didn't build it the day that he was born. So you're dealing here with over 800 years. Now, after the Churban, so you're dealing from Shlomo HaMelech till Churban Bayesheni, you have close to a millennium, almost 1,000 years, around 900 years. So these Gzeiras happen almost 1,000 years after Shlomo HaMelech. Okay. His Gzeira is only for Kodesh. The Gzeiras Kalim and the Gzeiras Yadayim for Truma, that happens on the roof of Hananiah ben Chizkiah. So now, it's really Geschmack, the original answer, because when Reb Chanina said his Eidus, there was Tumas Yadayim from Shlomo HaMelech. There was no Tumas Kalim yet. So it makes sense that Rabbi Akiva only speaks about Tumas Yadayim. That even though there's Tumas Yadayim, it's only outside of the Beis HaMikdash. That means Shlomo HaMelech's takana to wash your hands before you eat a carbon is only if you eat it outside of the Beis HaMikdash. So let's say I'm eating my carbon in Yerushalayim, I have to wash my hands. But in the Beis HaMikdash, Shlomo doesn't make that takana, which is a fascinating chiddush. That even though he made the takanas Yadayim for karbonis, it was not in the Beis HaMikdash. It was only outside of the Beis HaMikdash, like basar shlamim or other kachim kalim that you can eat in the whole Yerushalayim. But a carbon that you can eat only in the Beis HaMikdash, there's no tumas Yadayim on it. Why? Because there's no tumas Yadayim b'Mikdash. But tumas kalim is only much later. Yeah. So Shlomo made Stam Yadayim Kodesh. And then on the attic, they added Truma. And they added that apostles Truma. And they added the other takanas like the Sefer Torah. And they added that Kalim become Tameh through Mashkin. They added that the Kalim become Tameh through Mashkin. Okay. So now, let's understand the Gemarah. So you could say that Reb Chanina said his Eidus before Tumas Kalim, after Tumas Yadayim, because Yadayim was Shlomo HaMelech. What's Rav's question? Rav's question is Pashat. When did Rabbi Akiva live? This is Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva didn't live before Talmidei Hillel v'Shammai. Rabbi Akiva lived in the century after the Churban Bayesheni, after the story of the 18 things. So when Rabbi Akiva is talking about it, Rabbi Akiva knows about the Gzeira of Yud Ches Davar. He knows about it very well. He's one of the Tanoim. Rabbi Akiva knows about it. So he's not talking about Jewish history from 500 years ago. He's including all of the development of halacha. So when Rabbi Akiva is saying, Zachinu ein Tumas Yadayim b'Mikdash, which Tumas Yadayim is he referring to? Only Shlomo HaMelech? No, he's of course referring also to which Tumas Yadayim? To the Tumas Yadayim on the attic of Hananiah ben Chizkiah. So when he says Zachinu shein Tumas Yadayim b'Mikdash, he means that even after they added Tumas Yadayim on the attic and they added Truma, they still did not add the Beis HaMikdash. That's what Rabbi Akiva is telling us. That they didn't add Tum in the Beis HaMikdash. If so, he should have already added the second thing that they did. They made Tumas Kalim, and he should have said, but not in the Beis HaMikdash. That's the Vart. In other words, Boy B'Yoim doesn't mean it all happened on the same day. There was Takesh Shlomo HaMelech and the Yud Ches Davar. But when Rabbi Akiva is talking about it, and he says, Ein Tumas Yadayim b'Mikdash, he's not talking about Shlomo HaMelech. He's not ignoring what happened a few decades before him, or a century before him, or a half a century before him. He knows what happened then. So he's saying, even on the attic, when they extended the tumah of Yadayim to affect Truma, they still kept the Beis HaMikdash off limits. Zachinu she'ein tumas Yadayim b'mikdash. Zachinu, we were zoichet she'ein tumas Yadayim b'mikdash. Right? Did Rabbi Akiva say this before the Churban? Did Rabbi Akiva say this after the Churban? I'm not sure. If he said it after the Churban, it's quite interesting how they looked at the Beis HaMikdash. It was a real reality. Zachinu she'ein tumas Yadayim, because he was hoping it's going to get rebuilt. However you learn it. But he's saying that when it came to Tumas Yadayim, thank God they didn't extend it back to the Beis HaMikdash on the roof. Rabbi Akiva should have added one more thing. When they made the Gzeira on Kalim, Baruch Hashem, they didn't make it on the Beis HaMikdash. You can't speak about Tumas Yadayim and ignore something that happened 5 minutes later. Because if not, the Sakin should be tar. The Sakin should be Tameh, because it touched the Mashke in the Beis HaMikdash. And the Mashke was Tameh from the Machat or from the Basar. Why is the Sakin tar? He should have said, because ain't Tumas Kalim and Mikdash. I was before the Gzeira. No, Rabbi Akiva spoke about after the Gzeira. So he should have added. And Zachinu, that when they made the Yudches Gzeiris on the attic, they did not make the Gzeira of Kalim in the Beis HaMikdash. So just like the hands are tar, what else is tar? The Sakin is tar. Huh? And we know for sure that the Gzeira, maybe you can ask a Pashta question. Maybe they didn't. Maybe Rabbi Akiva couldn't say it because maybe the halacha changed. Maybe the Gzeiras Kalim isn't the Beis HaMikdash. Maybe that's why Rabbi Akiva didn't say it. Why don't you think of that? Maybe Tumas Yadayim is not in the Beis HaMikdash. Maybe Tumas Kalim is in the Beis HaMikdash.
If it will be in the Mikdash, the hands should be Tumas.
No, Tumas Yadayim not, but Tumas Kalim, yeah. Maybe the Kalis Sakin becomes Tameh from the Mashkin.
Why would they differentiate?
Huh?
Why would they?
Maybe because Tumas Yadayim is a serious thing. If the Yadayim are Tameh, it's going to be a serious thing, or maybe Kalim not. But the Vart is Azoi. Because if, there should have been a Mishnah or Braisa to say that what Reb Chanina is saying is wrong, la halacha. We have a Mishnah, Reb Chanina says the Sakin is tar. If on the attic they changed it, there should have been a Mishnah or Braisa and said, Reb Chanina said it, but after the Gzeira it changed. They kept that Mishnah intact without any refutation. This means that on the roof they didn't alter that halacha. Because if not, there should have been some Mishnah or Braisa to tell me that today, after the Gzeira of the Yudches things on the attic, the halacha changed. The knife is not tahir. So therefore it's obvious that the Gzeira of Kalim doesn't apply to the Beis HaMikdash. So Rabbi Akiva should have added this detail that it's a schuz that they weren't goyzen on Kalim at the Beis HaMikdash. So we're back to square one, why Rabbi Akiva only spoke about Tumas Yadayim. And the Gemara answers, and the answer is quite straight, direct. Ela Amarava, Hanach L'Tumas Sakin, Ta'afilu B'chulin Nami Loi Metame. No, you got it wrong. You're assuming that there's liquid here, there's no liquid here. Leave alone the Sakin, even outside of the Beis HaMikdash, even in Chulin, there was no tumah for this sakin. It's not like because the Beis HaMikdash, that's why there's no tumah. Nothing to do with the Beis HaMikdash. Even in Chulin, this sakin would not become tumah.
Why is that?
In other words, even in a case where Kalim would become tumah from Mashkin, this sakin, Hanach l'tumah sakin, this sakin would never become tumah. In the case of Reb Chanina, why? Hi sakin the naga b'mai. Why would the sakin get tummy? What did it touch? You want to say the sakin touched basar? Food is not matame keli even midrabanan. Ela the nugget b'machat. So you're going to tell me the sakin touched the machat? Ain't keli matame keli. A keli that's not an avatuma is not matame keli even midrabanan. And this machat was not an avatuma. This machat was not an avatuma. It was a rishon l'tuma. So Rav is saying, why are you assuming that there was liquid there to be metame, the sakin mishum gzeiras kelim? You don't have to assume that there was liquid, even though they rinse it. The Chanina doesn't mention liquid. Forget the liquid. Get rid of the liquid. Just talk about the machat and the basar. The basar can't be metame the sakin. The machat can't be metame the sakin. Oichel is not metame keli. Keli is not metame keli. Even outside of the Beis HaMikdash, the sakin would be tar. So of course, Rabbi Akiva doesn't speak about tumas kelim and mikdash. Tumas yadayim. If not for the Beis HaMikdash, the yadayim would be tameh. Because it touched basar or macha, that's a source of tumah. So for sure the yadayim would be tameh. So that's why Rabbi Akiva says Zachinu shein tumas yadayim b'mikdash. But for Kalim, even outside of the Beis Hamikdash, even after the Gzeira, the Sakin would remain tar. Hanach l'tumah Sakin. Even in Chulin, it wouldn't become Tameh from anything else. And therefore, we're good. Rabbi Akiva doesn't mention it. It's not a schus of the Beis Hamikdash. Huh?
What's for the dump comes up.
You say there's blood. And therefore the sakin touched the blood. And the blood touched the basar. The blood touched the basar, the machat. And therefore the blood has to be tameh. And the sakin touched that. So mainly that's what you're saying, right?
That's mashkin.
Huh?
That would happen.
You want to say what happened to all the blood?
That's what we asked. That's what we said before.
That we assumed that there was mashka. We assumed that there was mashka. Huh? You're saying what happened?
I asked about the blood because you can't. It's not a back.
How do you get rid of blood? You say
It's not a back.
when the kohen is cutting the sakin, it's blood, and the blood got tameh,
The meat ready to eat.
and the blood got tameh from the basar, or the blood got tameh from the machat, just like the basar. And b'meila,
Back to the original.
mashka is b'tameh kalim, right?
I asked it about it as a makshir. I didn't say the blood itself.
Right.
I asked about a makshir.
We're going to learn soon about machshir. Take a look in Rashi. Ela Amar Rava. V'adai kvar nigzera ala kelim ederabanan sheyitamu b'mashkin. You're right. The gzeira was already. Umiyu hacha leka mashkin. There's no mashkin. V'hanach letuma sakin da afilu b'chulin shlei choshu la'afsidon loy shayche bu hacha tuma l'sakin. Leave alone the tumah of the sakin. In other words, you don't need a good excuse why it's not tumah, because even in chulin, where they don't care if the sakin gets tumah. They don't care. It's not klei shar. It's not the Beis Hamikdash. They're not so makbid. Lo shaycha buacha tumah l'sakin. Why? The high sakin did not give it. What did it touch? Sheyitamu, it should become tameh. Lo basar, v'lo machat ein yichaylen l'tameh. Meat can't make it tameh. The needle can. The ein oichel v'lo keli she'ein avatum metam kelim afilu mederabanan. Food or a keli that's not an avatum, it can't be tumah to a keli even mederabanan. V'lo gazru chachamim medivreim tumah ala kelim ela sheyitamu min hamashkin. The only way a keli could become tummy is from mashke, not from oichel, even with the rabbanon, and not from another keli. Why? Because they were afraid of the saliva of a zav and a zav, which is an avatuma, and therefore they made all mashke could be metame keli, but nothing else. And here there's no mashke. So what is Rashi telling us? So Rashi is saying, I think,
Even if there is mashkin.
he's saying you're right.
There is mashkin.
Huh?
Right, only the other mashkin we're worried about, not the mashkin.
No, Rashi's saying like this. You're right. If there was mashka, water or blood, they rinsed it. They rinsed the animal. It would be tam midrabanan, right? Because Rabbi Akiva didn't say ein tumas kelim b'mikdash. He didn't say. He just said ein tumas yadayim b'mikdash. But he says we're going to take the words of Reb Chanina very narrow. We're going to be very, very narrow. We're going to take his words very strict without anything else. And we're going to look what he said. He said there was a needle. There was meat, there was knife, there was a kohen, there was nothing else. We're assuming there was water, there was blood. He says that's fine. But let's say he's talking about a case. You finished rinsing, you got rid of all the blood, everything is fine. Remember that the kohenim had to eat it at some point, so they got rid of the blood, right? And they got rid of ultimately. He says after everything's said and done, you're left with a dry knife and a dry meat and a dry needle. And you found the needle and it's tameh, and what's the status? And the answer is the needle is tameh, the basar is tameh, the adayim atar, the sakin is tar. We naturally assume there's mashkin, and therefore we got confused. Comes Rava and says, stick to the basics. As Rashi puts it, leke mashkin, there's no mashkin. Stick to the basics, there's only a sakin, and it can only get tameh from oichel or from a machat. And a machat can be metameh a keli, and oichel can be metameh a keli, and there's no mashkin. So naturally, we have to say, Rava says, Reb Chanina said a story. Keep the story intact. Don't embellish it. You say, yeah, but usually there's mashka. Fine.
This didn't.
Not usually, there's always.
I mean, he's saying, I hear what you're saying, but you know what?
Hanach l'tumasak. Hanach l'tumasak. Leave it alone.
What's it now? Okay.
Maybe it's not a fat piece of meat and no water is there.
Was sagt er?
What Rabbi Akiva is a rice. Mashkin is metam with the rice.
Yeah, mashka is metam oichel doiraisa, not kelim. Yeah, here we're talking about Kalim. The only tumah would be the Rabbanan, that's for sure.
I'm saying that there is no mashka.
If there's no mashka.
With Safik Mashkin, Safik the Rifle,
L'chumra.
It's the Chumra the Rifle or Chumra the Rabbanan?
That's a question, that's a machlekes or a shayna. If Safik Deraisa L'chumra is itself a Deraisa, or that it's only a Rabbanan. That's a machlekes or a shayna, yeah. So that's zwei große shittas in them. See, does guf is Deraisa. We'll be mamshich bezer Hashem tomorrow and try to come to grips with it.
The Gezerah of the Chumra that mashkin is the Tama was because of the Zav and the Zova. Which in that case would be.
In a case of mashke zova, the keli would taka be tamei min ha-Torah. It would be a rishon,
So
of
why is
course.
the Gezerah that everything is Tuma as a sheni that Tama should be a rishon? If the Gezerah is because of the Zav and Zova, should it be a rishon?
Excellent question. That's a good question. So why did the Chachamim make that the keli should only be a sheni? It should always be a rishon. Because the whole gzed is mitzad zav, and then it's a rishon. So they should have always made that the keli should be a rishon, not a sheni. Right? The answer to that is, why did they care so much if the keli becomes tameh from avatuma? One thing, truma. And for that, there's no difference if it's a rishon or a sheni. Because truma becomes a shlishi. Verstehst? Why do they care? So my bowl with the milk became a rishon l'tumah because the zav had his saliva in it. Okay, what's going to happen? And I'm going to say it's nothing. Milk is not metame kalim. And what's going to happen? What's going to happen? I'll put more cereal in it. Okay, so your cereal is tameh now. I'll tell you what's going to happen. What happens is I'm going to put truma in it. Because for chulin I don't care. I care for truma. That's my min. If I care for truma, even if the keli becomes a sheni, I won't use it for truma. Because it's a sheni, and if truma goes into a sheni, it becomes a shlishi. I will not put my truma salad into this bowl, because this salad is going to become a shlishi.
Get mixed up when the Zav spits on.
No, so if I know that a zav spits on a keli, it's taka rishon. And if food goes into it, it's a you're right.
You can't get confused and say it's a mashka is a sheni.
They're going to make a gzeda to make a fence. They're not going to make a gzeda to uproot every halacha. If a zav spit into it, it's a rishon. That's not a question. We're talking a zav didn't spit into it. Regular milk that's tameh, right? As a rishon or as a sheni is metame the keli. They're not going to turn it into a tumas rishon unless you have to. You're right. If a zav spits into it, it's going to be a rishon. You're right. Because they're afraid that if generally mashka is not metame kalim, what can happen? Not every day, once a year. It's not a gzeda that happens every day. It can happen once a month, once a year. But the point is it can happen. It's a common... It could happen that the zav is metame the keli, but you don't think so because it's regular mashka. And in that mashka got mixed up. Right? Mashka hazav. So really, the keli is tameh and a rishon, but you don't see it because it doesn't look like there's mashkas of, because it's a little saliva. It's not a big deal. So therefore they made that all mashka that's tameh should be tameh a keli, and I don't care if it's a sheni because I'm worried about truma, and that's going to be bavarim.
What do you say about that? What do you say about truma in the case of
But it's not fair to make it a rishon.
But mashka, why did you?
It's not fair to make it a rishon.
Why did it?
I'm afraid that
the
case is
sheni?
if the Zav would spit on something, I'm afraid you're going to make it a sheni.
Don't you have to make the sheni, the truma sheni?
I won't.
The zav being metama a rishon.
You're right. If a zav spit into a keli, that keli is a rishon. If food goes into that keli, it's a sheni.
Isn't the truma necessarily going to be a sheni at that point and not a shlishi?
If it falls into a keli that had,
That'll be a sheni.
you're right. You're right. Then it would be a sheni min ha-Torah. Truma could be a sheni min ha-Torah. But since even if truma is only a shlishi, you won't eat it, and it gets posel, and you're going to burn it. So therefore, they didn't need to make an extra tumah, an extra level of tumah. It wouldn't help the problem significantly. You understand? Their main concern is truma. Their main concern is not that there's going to be saliva of a zav and you're not going to know the keli is tameh, and really it is.
No, you're gonna know it's
Because let's say the chulin is
I
tameh.
say it's a shame, it's not a rishon. That's my question. Yeah, you know, you're gonna know it's tameh.
So you'll say the keli is a sheni. Truma you won't put in. The worst thing you'll put in there is chulin, and you'll say the chulin is fine. And really the chulin is tameh. Okay. So what's going to happen?
Is it tumah travel? If it's stuck at a rishon,
It won't travel to other chulin. The chulin is tameh. You're right.
So again, why
You'll say that the keli is a sheni, and you'll put in chulin. And really, we know the chulin is tameh because it's in a rishon, and he's going to think it's not tameh. Okay.
it's gonna.
So fine. So you have a problem. It's chulin. It's really tameh. Now, let's say a kohen eats it. He's fine. Midrabanan, he becomes a sheni. It's not the end of the world.
What's gonna happen?
What is the end of the world is? What is the end of the world is that you put truma into a keli that touched mashkes off. That's the end of the world. The fact that you put chulin there and you think the chulin is tahir, because you think it's only a sheni, no? So your chulin is tahir, really it's tameh because it was really a rishon. Okay, so what's going to happen now? So somebody's going to eat tameh de chulin. Nothing happens if you eat tameh. A kohen is going to eat tameh de chulin. Nothing happens if you eat tameh de chulin. Minat tahir. You typhus. What was your question?
why did they make mashka rishon? Should they make mashka over the shiny?
That's a good question. Why mashka did they bump up? His question on Kalim, yeah, we answered why mashka they bump up. Yeah? Mashka they had a problem with. Why? Because for mashka to get tameh is extremely easy. Why is it easy? Because it's minatoida for mashka to get tameh. Minatoida, because mashka doesn't need hechsher, right? Mashka is a muksher itself. Okay, so therefore they were very afraid with mashka. What was the chashash? The chashash was, I'm just going to give a simple example, it'll be easier. You have a zav, yeah? He comes down for breakfast. Okay. He touches oichel. He eats oichel. That oichel becomes a rishon l'tumah. Okay. Becomes a rishon l'tumah. But for oichel to become tameh, it needs to be muksher. Mashke doesn't have to be muksher. So mashke's tumah is much faster and much easier. So therefore they were choishish with mashke, that you should be much, much more careful with mashke. How could they make you be more careful with mashke? To bump it up as a rishon, so you'll be much more careful.
Why wouldn't you be more careful about the shiny?
When something is very dangerous and you can easily get hurt, you make more fences around it, right? It's so easy for it to get tameh. So they make more fences and motivations and incentives to make sure it doesn't get tameh. Because it's so easy. Like you build another fence. So what do? They say, you know what? If you touch this with tumah, even with a sheni, it's always going to rishon. Wow, I'm staying away from this. Before you touch a mashke, you're very, very cautious. Because it's just never ending. It's not like weakening. It's not becoming a sheni. It's always becoming a rishon.
Zera the Rabbana was usually of truma. They didn't care. I mean,
That's the ultimate reason.
What if chulin becomes? They would bump it up. You'd be afraid for chulin.
No, for truma.
Oh, for chulin, truma is not a problem. But for truma, you don't have to bump it to rishon. It seems like they did it only for chulin, not for
Afraid
truma.
if it wouldn't make the
They did it for
chulin
chulin.
You have to understand how far it goes. It's not only a rishon that touches a mashke becomes a sheni. Anything that passes truma that touches a mashke, the mashke becomes a rishon. In other words, let's say I have food that touches a keli, that touches a sheretz. So this food is a sheni, yeah? And this food touches a mashke. Midatayre, nothing happened. Sheni doesn't make a shlishi by chulin besides Rabbi Kiva. Midrabanan, this mashke now becomes a rishon. So you know how careful you are with it? Even a chulin shlishi, if it's a mashka, it becomes a rishon. There's one exception, a tvul yom. A tvul yom passes truma, but if he touches mashka, it doesn't become a rishon. If it's chulin, it's tired, and it's a shlishi. It's a very serious chumrah by mashka. Very serious chumrah.
Whenever
Huh? It's a never-ending cycle by mashka. Keeps on going back to rishon. It never decreases. What were they so afraid? They were so afraid that,
That shishi will make it a shuri? Like what? There's no tumor.
No, it seemed like they were afraid of chulun, basically.
They were so afraid because mashka is the easiest thing to become tameh, and it becomes tameh minat Torah even from a rishon. It's not like a keli. It becomes tameh from a rishon. It becomes tameh from a sheni if it's truma. It's a very serious issue, and it becomes very, very easily tameh. I'm going to give you my example again. I'm a zav or a nida or any type of tamidika person or a balkari. It doesn't have to be so serious. A balkari, which is a very common thing, it's part of the nature of the world. And I come down for breakfast. I didn't go to the mikveh yet. I don't have a mikveh here next door. Right? I didn't go to the mikveh. I have a cistern 6 miles away and it's dirty rainwater. So I'm delaying my mikveh. So I eat breakfast before I'm just being practical, right? Okay. I have food. If the food has got wet and mukhshal makabel tumah, it's a problem. But if not, the food won't be makabel tumah, okay? But let's say the food is makabel tumah. Then I say, okay, so the food is makabel tumah. The food became a rishon. Or the food became a sheni. If I'm a balkari, yes, I'm a rishon, so the food became a sheni. Okay. The food became a sheni. If I'm a zav, the food became a rishon. And now I think like this. There's a cup of water on the table. I don't have to clean up after breakfast. The cucumber and the water may touch each other. So what? The water becomes a sheni. If the water becomes a sheni, what happens? It doesn't travel anywhere. It's good. It's all over. It's finished. So my hakpada on the mashka will not be so serious because it's going down and down and down. If it touches another mashka, nothing happens. If it touches oichel, nothing happens. If it touches kalim, nothing happens. If it touches an adam, nothing happens. Nothing happens to anything. Right? And you're light about it. You're lenient about it. What's the emes? The emes is you may be right, minat Torah. But what's the problem? The problem is it's so easy for mashka to be tameh and it could be metamet truma.
Again, I understand why they made this concept, but why did they make like 100 times later still make tumah? Like,
because the kohen comes at night to eat the truma, right? He takes his chal, he puts it on the table. The table has a little liquid on it, yeah? Right? A little liquid on it, yeah? Because he wasn't careful about this liquid, and the truma is possible. Why is it not possible? Because the liquid was a sheni.
but why make a limit at 5 times to get the relation? Like,
So we want to make sure that no liquid is ever getting tameh. How do you make sure no liquid is getting ever tameh? You think 100 times before this liquid is getting in any contact with any source of tumah, whether it's a rishon source of tumah, whether it's even a sheni source of tumah. Because remember, if the mashka touches an av, it's a rishon. If the mashka touches a rishon, it's a rishon. If the mashka touches a sheni, it's a rishon. Anything that passes truma, right? If mayadayim are called sheni. If mayadayim touch mashka, they don't become shlishi, they become a rishon. I will not touch my coffee now. I will just not touch it.
but then the coffee
So what's going to happen? It's going to remain tired.
the coffee touch food and get tumah. The food
If the coffee touches food, the food becomes a sheni. If the food touches liquid, the liquid becomes a rishon. If the coffee touches coffee, it becomes a rishon. If that coffee touches coffee, it becomes a rishon. You're right.
There's nothing to worry by that point. There's no tumah.
But as a result of this, mashka is going to be very, very, still be 100,000 fences. Nobody's getting close to it. So what happens to the mashka? It's pure.
You make tumas yadayim also rishon.
Tumas yadayim, you don't need rishon. Tumas yadayim is sheni because you're worried about truma. And sheni will passel truma.
Right, and here it's not just worrying about truma, it's because you're worried about chulun. So make tumas yadayim also to worry about chulun.
Not worry about food.
The whole idea of bumping it to a rishon is not for truma, it's for chulun. Right? You don't have to bump it up to rishon for truma.
No, because if
So you're bumping it for rishon only for chulun. Worried about you're gonna because it's you use
if it will be able to make
it's for chulun, not for truma.
It's not for chulun. They wanted the koyanim to be careful of chulun.
But you don't have to bump it to a rishon for truma. Truma's anyway from sheni.
Just keep it sheni, you say. Keep it sheni.
It's only for chulun then.
Keep the mashka sheni and then you'll be good.
Yeah.
You'll be good. But they didn't want to keep the mashka sheni because if the mashka is sheni, it doesn't transfer tumma to anything else. besides truma.
We're worried about truma, though. That's what we're worried about.
You're saying it's over-inclusive, but people will get lax, you said.
That's the
They're
point.
worried about chulin, but only because of no.
Lax and what?
You're saying you don't need, you're saying
If the mashka is sheni, so I don't care if my oichel touches it, if the oichel is chulin.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Then you'll get also limit by.
Right. That's right.
And I don't care if my mashka touches it.
Right.
Huh?
Right.
But if my truma touches it,
Hey, but then we don't have to bump for that.
huh?
That you can keep it as shady.
but you'll get used to it. You'll get lax. You're saying it goes too far. You
So
can make
make
it.
In other words, if you know that even oichel chulin is becoming tameh, you're just it's a much more serious hazard. That's the point. It's a more, huh?
Tumas Yadayim too. You
It's-
say make it a rishon because to show how I mean,
Huh?
you do for that too. The whole idea of Tumas Yadayim is for truma. Don't say just for truma.
Right.
Make it more stringent.
I guess it was so easy for mashka to get tameh because liquid is everywhere. Things are wet. We live with moist. Huh?
Yadayim is all over. I mean,
You
you're
can't tell what the
using it.
liquid is by looking at it. You can't tell it.
Well, it's a shiva mashkim, yeah.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.